Hi class. So we are on chapters 11 and 19 this week. These two are combined because chapter 11 goes into a lot of details on how to shape children's values within the classroom setting by using lesson planning. And then it gives us a lot of options of different lesson plans for health and safety topics, which are what we've been covering so far in class. Once we finish chapter 11, though, we're going to get to chapters 12 and on, and that's going to be mostly about nutrition. Then chapter 19 ends the course with, or ends the text with lessons on nutrition for young children. I am just combining them because it's all about lesson planning, and you get to choose which topic. This goes along with an assignment that you've been assigned this week called Effective Instructional Design. And so you can pick to do your lesson plan on health, safety, or nutrition. You pick one of those topics. Please come up with something original that is not already listed in your text as examples. And so this lecture is just basically on how to write out a lesson using our critical thinking, using our concepts of development, as well as thinking through topics that are applicable to, for the most part, I usually consider preschool age for the lesson plan. And yeah, so we're gonna just delve into that. So that's why those two are combined this week. Okay. Let me start this here. All right, so when we're thinking about chapter 11, we're really thinking about how do we shape children's values? And really that comes from educating parents. It also comes from educating children. The things that we talk about in class with children are hopefully going to be ways that children then bring that conversation home to family as well. We can support what we teach children in the classroom with also parent education. And so that way it becomes a whole kind of triangle here, right? Classroom, child, parent, and they all go back and forth between each other. There we go. Okay, so a couple of things some terms just to think about is what a value is. It's really a belief, a tradition, a custom an individual incorporates and utilizes to guide behavior and judgments. When we're thinking about health, safety, and nutrition, there's different ways that we get these values. Some of them come from examples that we saw from our parents. Some might even come from laws that are in place, right? There's a seatbelt law. So if you're always wearing your seatbelt, that is a safety value that you have. Now, it may be more of a value because you don't want to get a ticket, or that could be the motivation, but nonetheless, it's a value that becomes a habit essentially. But there's ways that we can shape these types of values, start to give children these ideas about health, safety, and nutrition when we're in the classroom. Right, and that comes from how you interact with them and the lessons you create for them, the way that we model for them. So consistency, right? When we talked about safety guidelines, I see how this translates to that as well, because when you have safety guidelines in place for your classroom setting, if you're not consistent about it, then the children won't take it as important. And so let's say, there's a safety guideline that children should always go down the slide on their bottom and feet first. And then there's times where kids want to go up the slide, right? If we don't say anything, or we just pretend like we don't see it, and we let that happen, then the value of safety for the slide and the guideline that we have around that doesn't take. The kids don't think it's important because they notice that we're inconsistent with it. Do as I say and do, right? So that's a spin on the, the old phrase that a lot of parents sometimes use, do as I say, not as I do, right? We want our children to do even better than us, but we also, really the best way is to model for them. And so, in our household, we have a value of protecting your head when you're on a bicycle. Whether my kids want to wear their helmets or not, that is a value that I have. This is what happens when your mom works in a children's hospital, right? All the safety measures come out. They're lucky they're not wrapped in bubble wrap, is what I say. But nonetheless, this is something that is important. Even when my kids were little on a trike, and a trike's got 3 wheels, it's pretty stable. They still had to wear a helmet. And it wasn't because I was so much worried that they were going to take a huge tumble on a trike. They're already pretty low to the ground. Trike's pretty stable. Although I did see a few, wonky falls off the side of the curb a couple of times, but most of the time that's pretty safe. But why I made them wear a helmet on the trike is because I wanted to instill that value, instill that habit. Just like when we get in the car and we buckle up, we don't get on a bike or a scooter without a helmet on. When I get on a bike, I put a helmet on. I mean, I think I should protect myself. But there's a lot of families that sometimes once they're adults, they don't wear the helmet. They don't want to mess up their hair. They don't like the way it looks, whatever. I want to protect my brain because I want to be healthy and safe for my own children so that I can be in their life longer. But also because I want to model for them what I'm expecting of them. And then care providers, educators, teachers, even parents, we can all learn how to help children with these values by going to our own education. So whether that be trainings or in-services, guest speakers, ways to help instill values in children, we can learn as adults from other people as well. In the classroom is where you're really going to have the most impact when it comes to helping shape values. And so that comes from these trusting relationships that we build with children. If we don't establish a trusting relationship with them, then when we ask them to do something, when we explain to them a guideline, when we try to instill values through our lesson planning, it's not going to be effective because we don't have that relationship. So that building that relationship is key first. Again, consistency. So being there every day, right? Being a regular part of their life, that's what helps build those values because they're going to see that modeled every day. They're going to have that relationship every day. They're going to know that, you mean what you say because you follow through with it. And that's evident because you're a part of their life every day. And through education. So education for the children now, right? So this is where our lesson planning comes in place and really thinking through what we expect our lesson to do. We're not just randomly, throwing out worksheets in no particular order. We need to have a plan in place that really sets the tone for what we expect the children to learn. When there's that kind of thought put in behind the lesson plan, it's really going to make a big difference in what the children get from that lesson. So this is what's called Principles of Effective Instructional Design. It's just a fancy way of saying we're making a lesson, okay? So the first thing is selecting a topic. We need to think about a few things when it comes to the topic when it pertains to children. Your topic for this class that you're going to be reading about in your chapters 11 and 19, but also in your effective instructional design assignment are going to be based on health, safety, or nutrition. You're going to pick one of those 3 topics. Of course, there's lots of other topics. I'm going to have an example that I go through in here, that is not one of those topics, but so there's lots of topics, right? We could talk about more like academics and learning your letters and things like that. But for the purpose of this class, it's either going to be health, safety, or nutrition. But the topic does need to be developmentally appropriate. It needs to address children's interests and abilities, and it needs to respect cultural differences. So when it comes to health, safety, and nutrition, those are very appropriate topics, but you have to pick a topic within sort of that overarching idea. So if we're thinking about health, well, there's so much we could learn about health, right? But if we're thinking about preschool age, maybe we're not going to talk about the specifics of liver function, right? Because preschoolers probably don't know that they have a liver, right? Or that's a very general concept to them, that they have different organs that do different things. They might know about their heart, they might know about their lungs, maybe their brain. But as far as the liver and the gallbladder and all the other parts, that's not really on their radar yet. A lot of times they still think they're just kind of one solid mass and not made up of different parts. And so to talk in the specifics of, say, liver function, that would not be developmentally appropriate, because you have to start at a more basic level and work your way up. Your topic also needs to build on children's understanding and skills and part of a long-range plan. So when we've talked about the idea of scaffolding, or helping support learning, so a child knows something basic, like, so maybe the first thing is our body's made of different parts, right? And then from there, you're going to go into the main ones that they can sort of sense, right? Children are sensory learners, and so they can feel or hear with a stethoscope their heart beating. They could feel their lungs expanding in their chest, feel the breath of their air. So those might be the first parts you talk about. And then you would build on from there. A stomach, right, that we feed with food. Veins that we can see that have blood inside them that carry nutrients to our body from that food. Then maybe the liver, right? So you're building on concepts that they know, but you're starting from the basics. And you're going to take advantage of teachable moments when learning opportunities present themselves. So again, and this is thinking more applicable in a classroom setting, but when children have questions about something, even if it doesn't pertain exactly to what you're talking about or exactly that topic, helping them find the answers to those questions, or letting it be an idea for you for a future lesson, is a great idea, because it means they're already interested in it. But if you shut them down and say, you know what, that's not what we're talking about right now, we need to only focus on this, it doesn't give them the opportunity to ask those questions when they have them. Now, of course, there's times to stay on track and there's ways to keep boundaries in place, but you don't want to kind of crush their curiosity in the process just because it doesn't exactly line up with your objectives for that topic. So if we think about a preschool topic, I'm giving you an example. This is not, okay, we could call it health because it's emotional health. Although most of our topics have been more of physical health and keeping children healthy, their bodies healthy. But if we're thinking about the topic of emotional health for this example, that is important for preschoolers, right? And the idea, so emotional health is the big topic, but the title of my lesson would be, we all have lots of feelings. And this is a great topic for preschoolers because they're moving. So when we think about developmentally appropriate, they're moving from the stage of toddlerhood, which is very physical, where they don't have a lot of words, but they are feeling a lot of feelings, and they use those feelings to act out in physical ways like aggression, biting, hitting, tantrums displayed on the floor. Those feelings, we're trying to help them manage now that they have words. And when they're in preschool, they have words, they start to have more language, and they can label their feelings and use their words to express themselves rather than their physical bodies. Right? So I'm not keeping up with my slides here, but preschoolers have vocabulary now to label those feelings. We want them to use their words. We're trying to encourage that more than the physical actions, because as they get bigger, if they continue to express themselves physically, they're going to get hurt, we're going to get hurt, another kid's going to get hurt. So it's important that they make that transition from physical aggression to sharing of their words. But they need guidance, right? This is all, this is the whole reason why we're providing a lesson on this, is they need guidance, they need help, they need to value using their words and expressing themselves appropriately. And it helps them manage their feelings better. And so we're going to help them navigate this by creating a lesson about it, because it's very developmentally appropriate. It's something that all preschoolers need to go through. And so it fits right in with this. So our topic would be emotional health. We all have lots of feelings. The next thing we need to think about, and so let me backtrack just a little bit. What I'm going through here are the 4 principles of effective instructional design, and these are what you're going to create with your topic. So you're going to come up with a topic that pertains to preschoolers in the subject of health, safety, or nutrition. And then after the topic, you're going to create learning objectives. So I'm going to talk about what learning objectives are now, and then I'm going to give you my examples for my topic, which is emotional health for preschoolers. So I'm giving you the basics of your assignment, but I'm also giving you an example to help you kind of navigate what it actually looks like when you make it into a lesson, so that you guys can do that for your assignment as well. Okay, I meant to set that up earlier and forgot. All right, so developing learning objectives. Objectives are something that are clear, they're meaningful descriptions of specific behavioral outcomes, and these can be observed and measured. That's really important when you're writing your objective, is to make it something that you can either observe the children doing or you can measure it. Measure meaning it kind of has a quantity to it, and I'll get to what that means. Your learning objectives are going to guide your content selection and organization. They are going to help identify learning outcomes. So what you expect the children to gain from your lesson is what your objective is. And it helps determine how a topic or a theme is going to be presented. And then you're also going to use these objectives to then evaluate if the lesson was effective or not. So are you seeing from the children what you had expected to see when you wrote these objectives? So let's look at an example of what objectives would be for my topic, emotional health. Okay, so here's my topic. We all have lots of feelings. We're going to talk about feelings today, and we are going to learn about feelings with these preschoolers. And so my first objective is that when children finish my lesson today, or the day's worth of lessons, and that's the other thing too, is your objectives you need to consider your objectives to be something that a children would learn sort of in a day's worth of activities. This isn't something that might take the whole month, right? We're not learning all the letters of the alphabet in one day. That can't be your objective, right? I mean, that wouldn't fit in our topics of health, safety, and nutrition anyway, but it needs to be something that when you're writing your lesson plan, it's a day's worth of activities based on this topic, okay? So my first objective would be that children will identify 3 feelings. I want them to know 3 different feelings when we finish today's lessons. And I want them to use the statement, I feel blank when blank. So be able to put in the appropriate feeling for the appropriate situation. I'm trying to give them words now because they have words, they have more language when they're preschoolers to describe how they're feeling rather than act it out by hitting or pushing or grabbing or biting a playmate. So this statement, I feel blank when blank, is something we're going to start using. I'm introducing it during this lesson, but it's something I want them to use to express their feelings in class. So those are my objectives, 2 objectives. They're going to identify feelings and they're going to use this statement. So now I need to come up with learning activities that help them learn 3 different types of feelings, and then also that they can practice using that statement with. And so I'm going to be thinking about those objectives as I create my lesson or my learning activities in my lesson. So learning activities, to describe them, they need to appeal and hold children's interest and attention. So if you're thinking about reading, a psychology book on feelings to children, in preschool, that's not going to hold their attention, right? These need to be hands-on activities. They need to be maybe using the senses even. We need to think about how long the lesson should be as well, because preschoolers have, they're starting to grow in their attention span, but it's still small. We're going to focus on 1 or 2 basic concepts at a time. Right? So again, it's not going to be a lesson where we learn, we do the whole alphabet, right? If that was our goal, because that's too much, right? A day's worth of an activity might be 1 letter and learning different words that start with that letter. So it's 1 or 2 basic concepts and appropriate in length. Again, attention span. I'm not keeping up with my slides today, sorry. And hands-on participation and practice. So my example would first be reading the feelings book in circle time. This is a board book that's fairly short. It has lots of different faces. It's very colorful. So it's going to hold the children's interest, but it's a fairly short book. I don't know, 10 or 12 pages maybe. In circle time, we're also going to maybe hold up some of the faces as we see them and talk about them a little bit. So we're adding a little more dialogue along with the book. So here's some of the faces that I'm going to show, because I want them to identify 3 different feelings today. And so the first one is going to be mad, right? Preschoolers get mad a lot. So that's a good one. Happy, right? Preschoolers are happy a lot. We want to think about things that make them happy so that when they are mad, they can learn what they need to do to be happy again. And sad. Preschoolers do feel sad a lot. There's a lot of emotion that comes with learning those first stages of learning social interactions with other children. And so those are 3 basic emotions that we preschoolers especially go through every day. But everybody does. And so those are the 3 that we're going to talk about. I'm going to specifically point those out when I'm reading this book with them, and maybe hold up the faces afterwards and say, how do you think this child's feeling? What do we think this child's feeling? What's this child feeling? And have them share in a group, right? And then we're going to ask for input. So after we finish reading the book, that might take, 5 minutes at the most, we talk about the faces that I hold up, and we're going to say, hey, can somebody tell me why a child might feel like this child's feeling? And then that's going to help them start to use that phrase, I feel mad when someone takes my toy that I'm playing with, right? Or whatever, however they might fill it in. I feel happy when I'm playing with a friend. I feel sad when my mom drops me off at school and leaves, right? Those are all appropriate feelings, and we can start to use that phrase in this circle time with this book and with the faces that I'm going to hold up. Okay. So that's a circle time. That's one of my learning activities. My second learning activity is going to be a small group time. And so my small group time, where kids are with more kind of, there's 3 or 4 other kids maybe and a teacher, we're going to delve in a little bit more about feelings, and we're going to talk about how they feel today. And so they're going to choose from a variety of feeling faces on how they specifically are feeling this day. So we're going to have more than just the 3, because children always have, we always have more than just 3 feelings. And so we're just gonna talk about how they might be feeling with this face, and talk about different scenarios. Like, I feel this way when this happens. Then the children, after they've thought about how they're feeling today, we're going to use little mirrors, and they're going to look at their faces in the mirror, and then they're going to practice drawing their own self-reflection. Okay, so this is an activity that is encompassing multiple different domains of development as well. We're not only thinking cognitively and emotionally about how we're feeling and what feelings or what activities or what circumstances make us have certain feelings, but now they're going to try to draw it, which means they're going to be using fine motor skills, hand-eye coordination. All of that is coming into play. So this is another great aspect of a learning activity where it crosses different domains of development. So if you think all the way back to chapter 1, where we talked about the 5 key domains of development, when you're thinking of your learning activities, it's great, especially the small group time is the time where you can really kind of branch over multiple domains with one activity. Okay, so we had our large group time, our book reading about feelings to introduce the topic, and just general kind of large group discussion. Now we've got small group time. Now it's on to snacks. Okay, so this is another activity that children look forward to. Everybody looks forward to eating usually. And so during snack time, and this is really simple, just kind of add on to continue the conversation, because sitting down around a table when children are eating is a nice time to have more conversation about some of the things you've already been talking about. So here we're going to make different snacks that day into different facial expressions, just to kind of continue on to the conversation. Kids get to be creative a little bit. They probably have fun playing with their food, trying to make it look like a certain face, and then they get to eat it. Right? It doesn't all have to be like super fancy and really, deep and inspiring, right? Sometimes it can be fun. And that really pertains to their senses as well. And kids love that. So now we're at our 4th part, our 4th principle of effective instructional design, which is evaluation. So we want to evaluate our learning experience. And so what does evaluation mean? It's something that you're doing throughout the entire lesson. So and this is when you're practically working with the kids, when you're looking and watching them during the lesson, and you may think, wow, this is really exactly what I hoped they'd get out of this lesson. This is so great. Other times it's the opposite, where the lesson completely derails. The kids start focusing on something else entirely. With preschoolers, sometimes you're introducing new experiences to them, and that becomes the sole focus for them. So let's say it's the first time they're using glue sticks, and that has nothing to do with your lesson at all. Of course, it's just a glue stick, but for whatever reason, they're just like, they keep, squirting out glue, or they keep rolling it up really high and rolling it down low, and they're rubbing it on themselves. And it just becomes more of like a sensory experience than it actually does the lesson, right? And so this is part of your evaluation is, okay, I didn't realize glue sticks were going to be so exciting to them. I need to rethink how we're going to do this lesson so that they learn what I want them to learn, and the glue sticks are not a distraction. Right? Evaluation doesn't mean the lesson passes or fails. It just means you're thinking, are the kids getting out of this lesson what I wanted them to get out of it? Which goes back to your objectives. So based on your learning objectives, you're going to think back to those. Hey, did the kids actually learn what I wanted them to learn from this? And again, you're going to assess the effectiveness. So that might mean tweaking the lesson. It might mean, let's say they need to cut something out and the cutting just takes so long that you did not expect it to take that long, and they don't actually have time to get to the part where they're learning from the actual lesson. So maybe the next time you introduce it, you've already done the cutting for them, right? You can practice cutting other times. If the objective is for them to learn something from this lesson and this activity, then maybe you want to take out the part that's distracting them from it, like having to cut for 15 minutes and you didn't expect it to take that long. And again, whatever the information is that you come away with from evaluating this experience, that's what you're going to use then to improve your lessons in the future. So if everything goes right, think about, why did this go right? What about this lesson made it really, made it flow really well for the kids? What did they like about it? And make sure you add those components to future lessons. If you find that like the glue sticks were a distraction or the cutting took too long, then you can use that information to lessen that part of a future lesson and improve it so that they are learning more from your lessons than getting distracted. Okay, sorry, my slides are coming up wonky here. So for my learning objectives, if we think back, those were that the children will identify 3 feelings, and children will use the statement, I feel blank when blank, in class to express their feelings. If we think about these learning objectives too, remember they need to be observable and measurable. Well, this is measurable, right? Because I've got 3 here. I want them to know 3, and I can count 3, so that makes it measurable. Children will use the statement, I feel blank when blank. That's something I can observe, right? Because observing sometimes means looking, but I can hear them using the statement more. And so if I hear them using the statement more in class, that's going to help me feel like they have learned from this lesson. So my evaluation is going to be based on these objectives. So my first evaluation is children can identify happy, mad, and sad. Those were the 3 faces, if you remember from the large group circle time, that I held up to say, what is this child feeling? What is this child feeling? What is this child feeling? And those were the 3 specific feelings I wanted to focus on during that time. Even though there's a wide range of feelings, I just wanted to focus on those 3. And so I would expect to be able to hear from students when I hold up those faces or show them a picture of somebody looking sad, that they can identify that feeling as sad and mad and happy, those 3. And then the second way that I can evaluate this is I'm going to actually hear children saying and describing their feelings more with their peers in class. So we're going to start to hear more dialogue from children because we've given them words to use for how they feel. That's something observable. And I can evaluate if my objectives were learned by the children, if I can start hearing them talking about their feelings more in class. And then lastly, I'm hoping that I will observe a decrease in physical expression of feelings, right? So less hitting, less taking of items, less pushing and shoving, definitely less biting, hopefully, between the kids, because they're going to now have words to use. And typically when they can express themselves with words, they don't feel like they need to express themselves physically. And so those are ways that I'm going to evaluate, were my objectives learned by those children during this lesson. Okay, so that wraps up our lesson planning lecture, chapters 11 and 19. So again, you're then going to use these slides. If you need to come back as an example, you can use this lecture when you're creating your own effective instructional design. It's a 2-part assignment. and it's all spelled out on Canvas, but the first part is you writing your own lesson, just like I went through the 4 different parts. A topic, the learning objectives, the learning activities, and the evaluation. You're going to create a lesson based on health, safety, or nutrition, right? You're going to just pick one of those 3 to create your 4-part lesson. And then after you create your lesson, Canvas is randomly assigning you guys a peer review. And so you're going to be taking another classmate's lesson that they have developed, and you're going to be reviewing it. And you're going to use my lecture that I just went over and information from your text to give feedback to your peer or your classmate on their lesson and how they could improve it. And you're getting graded for not only your lesson and how you followed the 4 principles, but also the feedback that you give your peer as well. If you have any questions, you can always contact me, you know that, and we can talk about it further in office hours or over email, or we can schedule a specific Zoom time if you want me to look over your lessons more in depth. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. Thanks.